Anyway.
Ben-Hur in theaters sometime or whatever.
Also, I never like when especially main characters in shows will have a scene where someone enters their scene, does all the dialogue, they don't have to even say a single word, and then the person ends the scene and then
But how does that relate to Braveheart?
Yeah.
That's my problem with Braveheart. You know, when they have the Braveheart there?
Braveheart.
You know Mel Gibson isn't even the Braveheart?
Welcome to a Brave Bowl of Dude Soup. There's a little heart floating in the middle. You want to eat around that, though.
Yum.
Today's bowl is brought to you by Casper and ZipRecruiter. You can get $50 towards any mattress purchased by going to casper.com/soup and using offer code SOUP. And you can go to ZipRecruiter.com/dude to list your job for free on hundreds of job websites. I'm Lawrence Sontag. Welcome to Dude Soup.
I'm Elise Willems. Welcome to Dude Soup.
I'm Elise's husband, James.
I'm the guy from Braveheart who's laying in bed as that mace hit him in the face and he couldn't do anything about it.
And then Robert the Bruce got real scared.
God, that movie had extra innings, didn't it? It ended like 3 times.
There's a couple endings, and then they're like, oh yeah, because William Wallace is mad that they all leave, and he goes, I'll get revenge. It's like, didn't this start with revenge?
But it's funny, he does that, smashes the guy's head in, right? And then he's on his horse, like inside the guy's
what's that
apartment
about?
or whatever.
Well, yeah,
and they're like, there he is. He's like, fuck, how am I supposed to get out of here with this
In his
horse?
apartment.
He just like jumps out a window and the horse goes tumbling. He's like, that was a terrible play.
That must have been like part of folklore, right? And then William Wallace showed up and killed him and then rode out on a horse.
Maybe.
People were like, well, I guess we got to put it in the movie now. Mel Gibson was screaming at somebody.
A lot of it, I mean, a lot of that movie is Mel Gibson going, hey, this has got to be a film, bros. It's got to be a movie. It can't just be a historical piece.
For
it's not a
those
documentary.
just joining us, and that's everybody, the only reason we're talking about Braveheart is because I saw a Ben-Hur trailer, and I mentioned how it looked like
Two identical.
Gladiator, which is pretty much just like Braveheart.
Yeah, well,
But
you
different.
mentioned the fact that it looks like they make a big deal about the main character. Let's call him Ben. He's
wronged in some way.
He's wronged in some way, appears to lose his family, and then is immediately boning some other chick.
Which
is
seems
what
to be a theme.
Braveheart does.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Have you ever read The Odyssey? Like, oh, I miss my wife.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Are those
Get all
sirens?
those guts.
Yeah,
All of them.
I had no choice, honey.
And the
They had
story,
a
too, he
son.
spends like 5 years there boning down on
Well,
that chick,
but
Vanessa
in
Williams.
Odysseus' defense, he was kind of enchanted by her. Like, she was not just a hot chick. She had magical powers.
Honey, it's not my fault. The maid had magical powers.
Also,
over.
Also, he was never all. He didn't spend a lot of it being like, I love my wife. He was like, I gotta get back home.
Yeah, you're right.
Like, I have genetic material that I need to ensure has a legacy. That's
Plant in
more
that
about
woman.
what
Yeah,
it
and
is.
she had like 50 other dudes trying to get up in her clan.
Yeah,
Yeah,
did.
she did too.
Too.
She said, no, this is for Odysseus. He would never do anything bad for me. Meanwhile, I miss my wife.
All right, today we're playing Grow Up,
Oh, yeah.
which is an indie game that is not absolute garbage. On that note, let's talk about No Man's Sky.
Ooh,
Oh.
wow.
So you're the only one who's played it because
Yeah.
Yeah.
we all went, yeah, that's a game.
We should declare right now that
Oh.
we're all pretty uninformed, so we're going to be more picking your brain and,
yeah, no,
and
that's
offering
fine.
our completely uninformed opinions.
And I don't materially dislike it either, despite that intro. I just
How
thought
much
it was-
time did you
flow
put
with it.
into it over the weekend?
I think I'm at about 8 hours now,
Okay.
which is
That's a work day.
yeah, it's tough because with a game like that, the promise is that no matter how much time you put into it, there could always be something else. So I don't know if I've seen everything there is to see, but it sure does feel like I have.
Well, I'll say this. We've all played video games our whole lives.
Look at that little crab.
I'd say most games, I'd say a good amount, 99.99%. If you play the game for the first 5 to 6 hours, you pretty much have experienced everything unless it's Brütal Legend.
Well, yeah, Brütal Legend is definitely that. But there's some games that take forever. It's weird because it seems like tutorials in games have gotten way longer, even though all games are now more the same than they've ever
Yeah.
really been.
I guess I'm saying once you're playing Destiny or, I don't know, Final Fantasy 14 or whatever, the game doesn't suddenly become a race car simulator halfway through. Like, you pretty much have learned the mechanics. They just get deeper the longer you go.
Final Fantasy 13
So 13.
Yeah,
did
the one
not
that I was
even
thinking of.
introduce its party system until about 15 hours into
Yeah.
the game.
Final Fantasy that gave 13 specifically finally gave you all the mechanics
Sure.
about 20 hours.
But what I'm
yeah.
saying is, for the games like that, even
Yeah.
that. I mean,
No, you're right.
You can count maybe on one hand how many games just radically go a different direction halfway through.
Hey,
one
remember
of
the-
them being WarioWare.
Remember the pink-haired girl who, when she calls out her little thing, and then you do her superpower in Final Fantasy 13, she has an orgasm on top of it?
Talking about Vanille?
Yeah.
Yeah, she was weird.
She's like, ah! And then they'd all take damage.
was
Just
hard
like
to-
a real orgasm.
Hard to
I
figure
didn't-
her out.
I never played any of them past 9.
Pretty sure her and Fang were lesing out. I think that's
Yeah.
a pretty common
They
theory.
were, and they were like Australian.
I mean, they hugged a lot, but
Are those the
God.
girls from X2 and X3?
no.
X versus Sever.
No, that's Lightning
Oh.
and Lightning's sister, Thunder.
So Lawrence,
Fuck,
No
what was her
Man's
name?
Sky better
Oh, wait.
than Final Fantasy 13.
Oh my gosh.
In
That's
which
the question
ways?
on everyone's lips.
Yeah.
I wish that was
People
I want
demand
to
to
see that
know.
article post on a blog.
Polygon.
This is how No Man's Sky is better than Final Fantasy 13. Why is no one reading my blog? Damn
My
it.
blog.
Right about
Eh.
Kenny Baker dying.
It's
Sorry, I saw that on. I have a newsfeed thing.
Oh.
Yeah.
And the thing,
phone?
I have gaming, tech, and entertainment. Those are like the 3 categories I go through where I sort all my feeds. Every single one I clicked, the top headline was Kenny Baker dead, Kotaku, like headline, because for whatever reason Kotaku is listed as
apparently they
tech,
nailed that
entertainment.
fucking
Oh.
SEO.
I don't know. I don't know why I'd go to a gaming blog to find out about a small man
not
who
gaming.
got inside of a trash can.
Gaming
but-
is more than just interactive devices like we're using
Yeah,
right now.
gaming is whatever people wanna click on.
Gaming is little people in tin cans. Gaming is others Braveheart news. Gaming is everything.
Welcome to a gaming podcast.
I want
Yeah, see?
I want Kotaku to start Kotaku Braveheart. Kotaku
Kotaku
Australia.
Braveheart.com. Well, I mean, it's so Gawker's getting auctioned off. Maybe you can buy a chunk and set up your own Kotaku.
Brave
blog.
Taku.
You can own it with Hulk Hogan. That'd be great.
Brave Taku.
I would work with Hulk
Hulk
Hogan.
Taku.
Co Braveheart. No,
be
that
good.
doesn't work.
Oh.
So, I mean, do you guys care about No Man's Sky at all? Or is there anything you're curious about? So, I've got a number of prepared topics and stuff, but I don't want to just talk at you guys.
I guess the only reason we're talking about it is because of hype, or I guess perceived hype.
Sort of. There's a number of developments. So, I guess we'll start with what's the most topical.
Here, I'll take that for you.
You
Adam, you're not allowed to get distracted. The second
I will.
I'm ripping that control out of
I'm
your
just,
hand.
I'm just moving. I'm not paying attention. Listening to you.
As a 32-year-old man, every single time they basically introduce a new game that they say you can disappear into and thus lose months of your life, I go, okay, well that's something I'm not going to be playing.
Okay, so
I don't have
even
time
on
for
premise,
it.
it didn't interest you.
I mean, it's just like, I didn't play any Fallout 4. I
Well,
didn't play any Witcher, and
you
it's
hear
because when
The
am I
games-
supposed to do it?
the games that Sean Murray likes are like pure survival games, like DayZ, and those are definitely his games where it's like all you're doing is just sinking time without really a major end game. So this game makes pretty like a lot of sense from a perspective
yeah.
of like, oh, this is the kind of game he'd want to develop.
If you're poor and like in college or on summer break, like while these games, like during this era of gaming, boy oh boy, you've got it made in the shade.
Yeah.
Because you got nothing but time, and you don't need to spend that much money, and it's just gonna be.
Well, you've said
fun.
before, you're like, I just play Overwatch and Marvel Puzzle Quest, which is
Yeah.
about as much time as you have. so it
Because
makes sense.
I only have increments of maybe 45 minutes, sometimes an hour. If Elise is like, I'm gonna do something else entirely, and I'm like, okay, well I have an hour, so I might as well play something that can start and end whenever I need it to, and I don't have to worry about feeling like I'm completing something along the way.
also been watching a ton of movies and TV,
Yeah, that's true.
and that's been
How
Monopoly.
can you guys even call yourselves gamers?
They're
you don't
pop
des-
culture commentators.
Yeah, you don't deserve.
Which is
Kotaku.
pretty much
I don't
every YouTuber.
deserve this.
Yeah.
Too much.
I'm a robot climbing a giant mushroom tip. It's
Ew.
great. What?
Hold X. You got to scan that shit.
I'm swinging
Get the
on
tip,
this.
Lawrence.
Press
Giant
X.
tip.
Press X on that tip. There you go.
I'm pressing X.
You
So
did it.
the latest.
High.
That's funny. The latest scandal involving No Man's Sky is the complete and utter lack of any kind of multiplayer.
Okay.
So
Did
there
they
was
promise that.
sort of, and that's where it gets tricky, and also probably what we could tie into the discussion about hype and games publicity and things like that. So Sean Murray, in a number of interviews, implied heavily that encountering other players would be an experience people had, but didn't say exactly what form that would take, which on a larger scale is actually a pretty big part of, I think, why No Man's Sky is in a weird place now, kind of similar to how Destiny happened. I'll get to that in a second. But anyway, so he talked about how it's like, oh, it would be such a magical thing to encounter another player, and it would probably never happen because there's just so many planets. But when it does, oh man, is that ever a thing? I'm paraphrasing heavily, as you
Yeah.
said. But he it was never said that there's pretty much no multiplayer, which turns out is the case. It seems like the way that you interact with other players is you name things, and then if somebody else happens to find the thing you named, then you have had an impact on their game.
Sweet.
Okay.
So, and that is, there hasn't been a clear answer on exactly what the multiplayer component is. And since it's out on PC, people have been data mining the fuck out of it.
Yeah.
They found some interesting things, but here's a quote from the person who was data mining. Big surprise, no mentions of multiplayer could be found so far in any of the files or folders. So there's no code, there's no assets, there's not even player models. So it's like, that's when it gets weird, because sometimes if a game was supposed to have a feature and then it got canceled, there would be some legacy of it. There's a lot of that actually in the code. There was some references to Xbox One stuff, which has people really excited. But the fact that there's no multiplayer at all meant that there probably never was.
Yeah.
Which...
So did they ever flat out say, you and your friends will be able to party up
No.
and go kill stuff? Or is this just something people wanted and hoped
people
for?
assumed. So
I'm
hey.
only saying this because I'm not very educated on the subject, because all I would do is see a trailer and go, okay, cool.
Yeah.
There's going to be a different color planet. I have yet to see any like cool combat other than the space stuff looks interesting.
Just a Zen simulator.
Yeah,
Like-
and I guess I was just aware of
it's
what
so
it,
routinely annoying that it kind of smashes your zen. Then.
well, I don't know. Maybe I may have not been following Sean Murray's Twitter or whatever, but like I guess I don't know where the false promises were coming from.
So that's... Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, from the beginning, to me, the game has appeared to be the kind of like one of those phones that you can put pieces onto. But
Aria
except
or
it's
whatever.
just the framework, and since its announcement, people have been attaching their hopes and dreams to it, and basically designing the game that they want to play, not actually the game that they've been making the whole time.
Sure.
And you know, part of that could be put on the developers for probably intentionally being vague about what the game is, because it's so procedural and it's so kind of random and it's so kind of zen. It's like whatever, but like I don't know. It seems like people basically saw this. They're like, oh my god, it's going to be a space game where I can do this, and they would describe it to their friends, and without actually ever talking to Sean Murray about it, and then that friend would describe it to another friend based off things that they've added from the conversation from the first friend that were never actually said in that, which the guy didn't have a conversation with Sean Murray, and it just went down telephone chaining all the way down until it became this super game.
It's a game where you can ride a horse through somebody's
Yeah.
bedroom, jump out of a window.
I think you may have a point. To me, it's maybe not the developers that were necessarily like adding to the hype train, but you go directly to the publisher, Sony. Like it's an indie game that they launched as like their AAA like summer game, right?
Which is a big deal.
Yeah, they elevated it to that stature, and of course, like coming from that, Sony's like, well, we need to like drive this like we would any of our AAA titles, and maybe if it had just been a little indie that could, we would be like, wow, like think of what this game does and what it offers you to do.
So Sony's to blame.
It also costs $60.
I was gonna say it costs
It's not an indie game,
$60.
it costs
right?
$60.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's true. I think my big takeaway from this whole experience that no one will take away from it, because people like to have antagonists and everything. This small indie studio made a game that isn't living up to the promises that you were expecting for it. This is the same thing that happened with Battlefront. This is the same thing that happens every single year with almost every single AAA title. And every single time, there's some big post about how it's just a company trying to take our money. It's just another example of how they're nickel and diming us for everything. And it's always like, may not be that simple. It's not always cut and dry. People aren't villains and people aren't heroes. Yeah. Sometimes it's just a gray matter situation in the middle. And I think this is a pretty good case for that gray matter situation in the middle. Like, does Sean Murray seem like a money-grubbing, evil guy who just wants to lie to you and take your money? Well, absolutely. Yes, he does.
No, he seems
but
like the
that's just
nicest dude in the world.
No, he seems like a super nice dude who is really passionate about this kind of like this project that he was working on, and Sony even like did put a big spotlight under it, but I think Sony probably thought, hey, this is really cool. This could be a cool thing. Maybe we want to support an independent studio because we see stuff like Minecraft and we see that there's money there and these communities to grow around games that are kind of vague, and they're kind of like what you make of them. So maybe we want to get in on the ground floor of that. And then everyone saw, they were like, why is Sony doing this at E3? They're like, they must know something. They must know that this is the greatest, biggest game of all time, and thus more expectations were put on top.
It also got announced, I think, at VGX, which was like a pretty unique platform for it to get promoted.
That's the Game Awards, right?
Yeah, well,
VGX.
VGX.
You're biased.
Is that what it's called?
You're working.
That year it was VGX.
What's DGX stand for?
Video game extravaganza.
Extreme.
Extremity.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember, but
that's fine.
and that was like a big thing because it was like, oh, it's a new kind of show, and they are coming on the VGXs.
Sure.
And
I
so
guess.
that show needed to like hype everything that was on it to make everything that was featured on that show seem like the biggest thing in the world too.
It's kind of strange to go, okay, from the creator of Joe Danger comes another indie game. Like just be aware of what it is, a small man team making a small thing. On the flip side, there's a similar game that is promising basically the world, quite literally.
Adventure
Star Citizen?
Exactly. Yeah, Star Citizen.
Yeah.
So Star Citizen is interesting because they have shown space combat, they've shown space exploration, they've shown first-person combat, they've shown all these things. The problem is it's so early, and they haven't really shown any of the things actually working together.
That's the thing. It's not early. That game was supposed to be finished in
It will never be done.
2014.
It's possibly the most ambitious game ever made, and it's more of like, I guess, sort of what I'm thinking No Man's Sky would be, like this never-ending procedural MMO in space with actual combat and all these things. But every time I've seen any first-person combat in that game, it's always like, it's very slow, it's very sluggish. But obviously, the minute we even mention it, we get yelled at because there's a lot of people who have a lot of...
People are invested, man.
They're very invested in it, and it's something I've noticed ever since DayZ and the Warzy is that there's always a very toxic community behind these things where people just... I don't understand it. It's
Because their new reality.
maybe it's
they
just
want
those
it to
types
be.
of games attract a very certain type of person, and it's not the type of person I am, so it's usually games I stay away from.
Well, I mean, Bruce has talked about it 100 times, and I use this example all the time, which he reviewed technology and stuff on Attack of the Show.
Oh,
that
yeah.
was like part of his that was his job basically, right? To review technology, and it was technology that I think 99% of the time the company would say, we're going to send you a product, you can mess with it however you want to, and then once it's done, you send it back to us. Like I think 9 times out of 10, he'd have to send it back, especially if it's like a big ticket item like a TV. And TVs were a good example, and he'd always say, I would get the product and I would review it, and then someone in the office would ultimately have purchased that same TV, right? And they would say, it's the greatest. It's yes. And he'd ask them, like, what do you think of it? And he'd go, it's the greatest TV I've ever had. It's amazing. It has everything I need. Whereas Bruce, who was reviewing it and hadn't put down $2,000 of his own money into it, would look at it and go, this TV's missing a lot of features that TVs that cost 25% less than this one have. And the picture quality is not that great, and it's not that good. But when he talks to the person who spent $2,000 on it, it's the greatest TV they've ever. It's just this. It's this buyer's bias.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like we are invested in this product, so absolutely
Justify your
it has-
purchase.
Yeah,
it
you
has
justify it
to.
yourself.
It has to work for us.
It's like early adopters too that get in on the ground of something like Google Glass or something like that, and they're like, "Oh, this is like the coolest thing. This is the future." And it's like, okay, well, you do have to justify it to yourself. What's that game that I was looking at where you ride or your dinosaurs? Not Ark, but
Stomping Land?
Orion, Dino Prelude.
No, I know what you're talking about.
Take your pick.
Carnage
There's
Prime.
a lot of them.
Yeah, I know what you're talking
there was
about.
this game that we were looking at playing for like Let's Play or something. It's on Steam, and you play as dinosaurs.
I'm gonna tell you right now, the name doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Okay, I was gonna try to find it, but it was amazing because it launched as like early access, free to play, and I was looking at the reviews for it, and I guess a year later they did a major change to the game, or it became like pay to play, and all the reviews became like, oh, this game it's terrible. The new update they did was terrible. I just can't play this anymore. But those people had sunk like 200 hours. I looked at like 50 reviews where it was like 150 hours, 200 hours, 80 hours, and I was like, Jesus Christ, these people. I know that the update affected a lot of them, but they put so much time into a game that ultimately they went, like I didn't really like this game, and I can't imagine doing that. I just can't.
That's that's another risk of being an early adopter, I guess. And I don't know, it's weird. Like, because probably stuff like Rock Band or Civilization are games that I've put like in the hundreds of hours mark. And it'd be weird if I just logged into Civilization one day and they're like, oh, no, it's not a game like that. No.
Yeah.
Like, you don't do that anymore. No,
It's Forza now.
Yeah, it's a racing game.
Yeah.
But I like...
The only game I can really think of that comes to mind when I think of it is Star Wars Galaxies, I think, where they did a major change because they were trying to get other players to get in on it because it was such a deep MMO. I'm not talking about Star Wars The Old Republic, the new one, the old Star Wars Galaxies. Like, they changed it, made it into like a third-person shooter, and people were like, this is done, it's done. It was just the final death nail because they were like, they were already losing subscribers, so they were like, fuck it.
Pokemon Go blew
Oh,
it.
yeah, but that's a free-to-play, I don't
And
know.
it's still doing
It's
really
also
well,
part of the like free app cycle. There's a lot of boom and bust in that market in general. I think that's just part of it.
Lawrence, is there still supposed to be something like monumental at the center of the No Man's Sky universe?
I mean, there's the ending of the game.
okay.
I haven't gotten there yet, so
I haven't really paid
I'm not sure if I'm gonna.
I kind of skimmed a YouTube video. It's so weird. When you don't care about this stuff, it doesn't affect you so badly.
Yeah.
And when you just
No
sort
spoilers
of...
now. What if I want to get to that galaxy?
It was just like a text screen. It was like,
okay.
okay, cool. Then it like starts you over.
Now you spoiled me.
It's spoiled now.
That's
I know
exactly what I didn't want you to do.
Just like the real center of our universe.
It's strange. I don't know. I mean, there's nothing in that game. They showed three things. They showed procedurally generated planets. They showed space, flight, and stuff. And then they showed a gun that mines rocks.
Cool. Yeah, that's pretty much
That was pretty. Never once in there did I see like
There's space lasers.
combat or like any sort of like cooldown for a power that looked like Destiny, even though the entire UI looks like Destiny.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I see what it is. I get it. And it's strange to see people go, this is going to change everything. They're like, no, what? No, they're just little spore creatures. Like, you get to name them. That's all it is.
Question
It's a
for
good
you,
game.
Lawrence, having played it. How much can you, like, say you land on a planet, can you do anything to change it, or can you just rip it to shreds and then take what you need and fly away?
You can.
Can you, like,
You can't
build
deform
a house?
most of the terrain. No, you cannot build anything yet.
You can't, like...
But I think the idea is that will be patched in,
Okay.
depending on the success of the game over time.
Yeah.
Speaking of homes, if you were to build a home on a foreign planet, you might want to make sure that you get a good rest in that home with a Casper mattress, which is so space age with its technology that surely it would exist in the world of No Man's Sky. So this podcast is sponsored by Casper, who make amazing mattresses. There's some kind of crazy future foam that conforms to your body and holds you up like a little baby boy or girl while you're sleeping. It's marvelous. If you've never been cradled by a mattress, you need it. You need it in your life. They say an in-house team of engineers spent thousands of hours developing the Casper. Why is that so hard to say? It combines springy latex and supportive memory foams for a sleep surface that's got just the right sink and just the right bounce. Which, in case you're wondering, yes, it's fantastic for having sex on. In case you're wondering.
It's funny that you say
Who's
that.
wondering?
I just coined a term in my mind that you'll see on Urban Dictionary soon called fatress, which is where, like, your girl got so much back that when she lying on the bed, her back's elevated because her booty's popping.
I gotcha.
Fatress.
Is
Okay.
she the fatress?
No. It's not. Nobody's fat. Nobody's fat here. It's just pronounced posterior.
I know, but
you're lying on the bed.
What exactly is the fatress?
Well, no,
it's the
just
shape that the body takes?
No, it's the butt. You got a lot of butt.
Okay, so that's the butt that creates
But
the
it's a
shape.
positive term. It's not meant to be
power,
negative.
sure.
Have negative connotations.
They say Casper mattresses are completely risk-free. So it has a 100-day return policy. You can get it, sleep on it for 100 goddamn days, and if you don't like it, they'll come and pick it up, which is pretty awesome. Also, the shipping is really easy. You can buy them on the internet, and it comes in this compressed little box. Be careful where you open it, because you might smother yourself and get into a weird situation. And they're made in America, so it's basically the perfect thing. So you can get $50 towards any mattress by going to casper.com/soup. Once more, that's casper.com/soup. That's one of those adult things, man. You get a job, you get your own apartment, you gotta buy a bed. And that's when you start to understand that being an adult is really fucking expensive. So don't spend too much money on something that's not good. Buy a Casper mattress. They're actually a little cheaper than most mattresses and better, so I really recommend them. Once more, that's casper.com/soup, and use offer code SOUP. Thank you for your sponsorship, Casper.
Much appreciated.
if you got fatress, that mattress is just going to conform.
Yeah, it'll just sink right
nice.
in, and then the fatress will disappear. So I didn't.
Yeah, but then how do we determine if it's a fatress if you can't see
Oh
it?
no, I'm sorry. I also didn't mean to cut you off, Lawrence. I thought you were done the ad read
Nah, it's
when
all
you
right.
started talking about sex on the mattress.
No,
that
that's when
just
the
started.
That's when the ad read is really taken off.
Yeah. That's why they sponsor with us. They know Lawrence will talk about
That's
sex.
right. I have a greater theory of No Man's Sky,
All right.
or whatever. So and it largely comes down to That butterfly was doing barrel rolls. It largely comes down to, I think, known game systems, and in a larger degree, it's just what humans tend to do when they don't understand something. So, whenever a new Call of Duty gets announced, people know exactly what it is.
Yeah.
There's almost no imagination space there. It's like, oh, I'm going to run around, I'm going to shoot guys, I'm going to pull the iron sights, it's going to lock onto something, I'm going to pull the trigger, and then I'll feel good about myself for a little bit. Every so often, there's a new concept, one that people haven't played before. So something like the Wii, something very similar happened where Nintendo tried their damnedest to explain or show exactly what it is. Actually, they didn't. I take that back. They were accurate in one way and totally inaccurate in another way in their marketing material.
The old people bowling?
Yeah. So
That showed
I
me.
was like, I don't want to be an old person. I
Yeah.
thought it made you the old person.
I think it's more like there were severe limitations to the Wii's technology, and they pitched it as like one-to-one true space motion tracking when it really
yeah.
wasn't. But at the same time, it basically gave people this negative space where they had to fill in the gaps with their own imagination. And that's always the dangerous thing, because people's imaginations are always way better and cooler than reality.
Yeah.
And I recall something similar happened when I used to play retro games. Like the graphics weren't good enough to show you the artist's true intention, and the writing, especially because it was mostly translated from Japanese, wasn't accurate enough to really convey the story all that well. But somehow in the middle, my imagination sort of filled in the gaps. So when I was playing like an old Final Fantasy game, I had a pretty, what I would consider, accurate idea of what the characters looked like, even though it wasn't even close to the character art.
It's similar to like a book being adapted for
Exactly.
film, where people go, "That's not what Pennywise looks like."
Exactly.
He has a stroke.
I think something similar. I think something similar happens when you have a game like, frustratingly, Destiny was marketed that way, where they were super vague about all the gameplay details.
Yeah.
And in the
well,
same
the difference
way,
with that though is they put out an alpha or like a beta, and you played it.
Yeah, and you're like, oh,
and
it's
a lot
a
of
shooter.
Well, a lot of people went, "This is it," and I was like, "Well, yeah."
Well,
Like,
then they were
if you
like,
like it or you
no,
don't.
Yeah.
no, it's 1% of it. Not telling
Yeah.
you that it's maybe in
The other
terms of
99%
surface
of the same
area,
thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
1%.
I don't
but
know
like,
if they said that, but whatever. That's the other thing too. God bless human beings. They want to believe in a better life.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
That like
Well,
that
it happens
well,
unconsciously is the problem.
you keep throwing money at it, they think it'll make it better.
The
and it's never the
unfortunate
case.
thing too is that it's good that human beings want to believe in a better life, but then you give them a game where you have a spaceship and you can go from an almost infinite wealth of different planets and just explore at your leisure and have stuff, and people go, I've been ripped off.
Yeah.
Like, it's weird because we're like human beings are eternally hopeful, but also eternally pessimistic.
But it's weird because I don't want to lay the blame at anyone's feet, but I feel like people should know better in terms of PR and marketing. Don't give people negative space to imagine what they want. Because if they had on No Man's Sky said, we have this amazing tech, we can generate planets, it's incredible, we can generate spaceships, but it's Minecraft. Like it's DayZ. It's
not even Minecraft.
So-
It's a repetitive grind simulator.
Here's the problem.
Just tell people that so they don't flip their damn shits when they forget what the game actually is.
Here's the problem. You use the example of the Wii, right?
Yeah.
One of the greatest selling consoles of all time.
Yeah.
So
okay.
I think like we and people that will write about it will be like, here are our problems with it. But if they make it seem vague
I was
and they
speaking
can,
to mostly to PR backlash, but yeah, I see what you mean.
but if they can hit that broad audience,
That's a good
and then
point.
No Man's Sky becomes one of the greatest selling games of all time, doesn't matter how accurate they were
And it has
in
what
their
the best
in their PR.
Steam launch. Of,
Yeah, they
forget the-
made a ton of
forget the
money.
cat- category, but
the
it's
stuff
sold extremely well.
stuff will affect you less if, like me, you just let a part of yourself die, and you realize everything is just sort of the same old repackaged shit.
I mean, it
What
is
about
and isn't.
Well, we're playing as a robot rock climbing up a wall. This
It's
is
cute.
different.
That's fine.
Well, you run into the problem with repackaging something if you promise it to be a revolutionary new gaming experience,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
they did a
Man's
little
Sky
bit.
can be.
People were saying that.
Whenever you go down to a planet, that's fucking cool, and it never stops being cool.
Yeah.
But then your fucking ship runs out of shit, and you got to shoot some rocks, and you're told you have no inventory space, and then these robots showed up and start shooting you, and they introduced a lot of friction to the gameplay loop because otherwise you would just blast right through it. So it's one of those like they had the tech and didn't know how to make the tech harmonize with a game structure, so they just put a game structure in there and then kind of almost mechanically forced it into the beats of a game after the fact. Which is still kind of fun, but it's not as harmonious as, say, something like Wii Sports, which I thought was still probably one of the best Wii games. Wii Sports Resort is another one because Nintendo knew exactly how to use that tech in the right way with the software. So like baseball and bowling felt perfect. No other Wii game did because those games did an incredible job of hiding the drawbacks of the Wii hardware.
Yeah.
No Man's Sky has incredible tech. The generating the planets, and it is a little weird when you go down to a planet because there's a pretty big like resource bomb that drops on your PS4 or your PC. But it's still super genuinely cool to just fly to a planet in real time, go through the atmosphere and fly around the surface, then fly back up into space. That is genuinely incredible.
Can I just say the only other game I ever enjoyed using the Wiimote for was Blox.
Oh yeah.
Where it felt like inherently natural. Like, yes, of course we would be playing this game with this type of controller. Like, this is fun. It's really fun.
Someone hasn't played Red Steel.
Red Steel 2
I have played
was
Red Steel
awesome.
and Red Steel 2.
Red Steel
I played.
1 was
I
not
had to do a game capture for Red Steel for when I was doing in-store stuff for EB Games or whatever. And I remember the review. They're like, with 1-to-1 shooting mechanics. And I was like,
jumping all over.
what?
That was
no.
a big thing after the Wii Motion Plus got added. It was all 1-to-1. Everything was 1-to-1.
The weird thing about it is that it's like
It became real.
the Wii Motion Plus,
that was what Wii was kind of understood to be.
That's a
but
we
it's-
could do a whole
it's opinions,
podcast on the
though.
Wii Motion Plus.
It's my opinion, but it's like I had way more fun with Twilight Princess and the limited Wii controls
Really?
than I did with Skyward Sword and the 1-to-1.
I
Want to know why? Because I'm not a sword fighter, and I'm not a good sword fighter. So when you want me to cut something horizontally, and I'm sitting on the couch like this with one hand in popcorn, and then I go like that, I miss it, and then I miss it. Now I'm taking damage. Whereas before, it's like, okay, I felt like I was maybe kind of a sword fighter because I go like, yeah,
I see.
yeah, but like this is about as good as any of us are at sword fighting, except for maybe Lawrence.
I was about to say, I genuinely, I super loved Skyward Sword, but
I had a problem with it where I played it and there was like one of the earliest tutorials where they're like, Link, you're falling. Use your 1-to-1
skydiving
motion controller to fall. And he went, "Rrr," and he like shifted off to the side and kept falling. I'm like, the Motion Plus isn't working.
You
Yeah,
need
you
to do
tell
I
this.
us.
tried
Yeah.
about 6 different ways and I said, okay, I understand. The game doesn't want to be played.
Yeah.
Moving on.
The game too.
I never
also,
played Skyward Sword.
They also understood that not everyone is a sword fighter, so it was basically limited to cut them this way or cut them that way.
yeah. And very occasionally, I remember there was one Staphos or whatever. No, wait, what are the lizards called? Staphoses are the skeletons.
It doesn't.
Well, anyway,
I don't remember.
He would like he would hold 2 swords at a diagonal, and you had to like slash through them. I was like, that's cool. But then again, I never had the problem that most people did with getting the controls to actually behave. I speculate, even now, kind of like the Kinect, that there was a different kind of dexterity required. I don't know. Do you guys remember when you first started playing games and your hands just wouldn't do what you wanted them to do? Because you had to learn the dexterity of hitting buttons at the right time and using your thumbs correctly. I felt the same way, the same kind of frustration when I first played Kinect games and when I first played Wii games. After a while, I got better at it because I could kind of tune into what the game wanted, especially in terms of the Wii. It's like once you realize it just wants a sharp motion in a particular direction, and most of the time, it's so inaccurate that the developers just make it a sharp motion in any direction.
Sure.
Then suddenly it becomes a lot easier. It was the same with like Twilight Princess. The sword fighting was just after a while, and then the shield bash was just you don't have to actually
I
swipe
think
it.
so much of it is muscle memory too, which is
that,
something that you are much more adept at quickly picking up when you're a child too. I after I broke my hand, I had to sort of rethink how I did so many things, including just writing. My handwriting changed. In the way I hold a pencil is a little bit different.
Well, I mean, think about it. Think about the way you play Mario or
Mario.
or any video game versus how your parents or your grandparents play.
Oh,
Where they,
yeah.
remember Joel would look at the controller and go,
Where's
okay,
the-
yeah. I'm like,
Dan, our very own Dan, sometimes will play it seems like sacrilege,
Oh,
but
like-
this.
Oh, he'll throw index fingers up?
He'll do that.
Nice.
And I'm like, what are you doing?
that's it.
That's
Really?
I was just
Really?
but it's just because it's that's just kind of where his dexterity works.
He's a
Yeah, I
big
was gonna say.
gamer
Well,
boy.
I mean, every person's different, but kind of what it comes down to. I forget, how did we get on this subject? Oh, because we're on motion controls.
Video games, who knows?
But it's all those fail army videos we watch every week where people forget how their legs work, or and then on the flip side, I was watching gymnastics last night, and it's like, how does a person do a backflip 3 times standing in one place and then land, and then their leg shifts a little bit, and the person goes, ooh, big mistake there. And I'm like, I couldn't do half of that if I wanted to. Like it's all just different. So and then going down to the very nitty gritty of it, like a controller of just memorizing where buttons are.
Yeah.
It's the sort of thing of like once you get into muscle memory, you just learn how to do stuff. I don't know. And then that's why I think VR is going to be really interesting when we get to that point where it is one-to-one and we're doing all this stuff. And then you're seeing all the people who have no dexterity whatsoever in their normal day-to-day life and they're just falling on their faces. And they're like, it's the game's fault.
Yeah.
I don't know. Sometimes controls can allow you to get around the hurdle of things you could never do in real life. And then there's other people who can do amazing things in real life who could probably never do anything with a controller. So it's all for different people.
We were playing Rock Band on the weekend. The calibration was like all fucked up.
Yeah.
And they're like, can you imagine like once VR becomes like super one-to-one and then you put on a VR headset and the calibration is off and then like you and your body are trying to naturally do something and you're like fumbling and it's gonna be fun.
That happened with the Vive where it was loading a game and it would do a thing where up was down and down was up. Just for a half a second.
To break
And I
your
remember
brain.
I looked up and everything went down and I wanted to throw up and fall over and die.
James, I don't know if you're just exploring, but you got to ram those little penile things into the glowy yellow rocks.
Lawrence is explaining sex for those who are just joining
This
us.
is not an ad read, not yet. So there's one around you. I can't remember where specifically it was.
Real quick, this game is a sequel?
Yeah.
Okay.
To grow up.
Yeah, I never played the original, so.
I actually didn't either. I meant to. It looked cute.
I used to do this thing. I think, at least,
supposed
let
to
me know
stop
if you
shaking
used to
my
do
feet.
this too.
My
I know Lawrence kind of did at one point, but back in the day we used to do an award show.
Oh,
and so
yeah.
I would pride myself in trying to play every big game of the year. And I have since given up on that. Just because life's so much more enjoyable when you just play things that you find time for.
At Game Trailers, we covered everything, and like we would get a ton of preview builds. So I would at least like play a ton of preview builds of games, but we don't really. That's not really our spiel here. But
Yeah, not really.
Well, it's also the.
We're still playing Hitman. I mean, we play weird garbage.
Yeah, it's more about marketability than. And this is kind of one of the sadder things. Maybe not sad. I guess it's not sad because it's still being driven by the market, but there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of market now for kind of empirical market-wide games coverage. Maybe it's because the individual markets inside of gaming have themselves gotten big enough that they each want content kind of catered to them as opposed to somebody that covers everything. There doesn't seem to be much demand for I just like games, so I want to see everything about every game possible. Oh, cram it into the yellow thing. Aw.
You can control it?
Oh wait, no, you got it in there. Okay.
I don't know. This game's
Yeah,
about,
you gotta
this game's
feed
about
the-
ramming dicks.
You got to
into
feed the star plant. It makes it grow. Home.
I guess for audio listeners, I'm sorry that you can't see this, but at the same time, you're probably better off because you'd be so aroused
I know.
that you wouldn't be able to contain yourself.
You probably are aroused.
I'm
anyway.
aroused now. Well, if you need help growing your star plant, you should list your job on ZipRecruiter.com. I listed a job there, and I'm going to spin this positively because about an hour after listing my job, my account got closed. So apparently my job listing was a little too on the nose. I was trying to find a personal assistant. Some of the requirements included somebody that could encourage me both physically and spiritually throughout the day.
Gee, I wonder why his
those-
account was closed.
It was, hey, it was positive and constructive. I said there would be light shopping, probably some heavy lifting.
Light shopping, heavy lifting.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
by that I implied myself. They would have to carry me.
Well, he's
Oh,
also
I
on a
see.
cut, so it's not going to be heavy shopping.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, James. But yeah, so they apparently screen their job listings very closely. So if you're either looking for a job or want to list your job, I can promise you that you'll be in legitimate company, not assholes like me listing fake jobs. And it's a pretty cool service. Essentially, you fill out your job description and they'll repost it to hundreds of job sites for you. So you don't have to list it on a number of places. You can just do it there. It's pretty cool too. They'll provide you templates and stuff based on the job criteria that you select. So you can just get in there and fill out certain bullet points to your liking, like heavy lifting. They would ask you to find out today why ZipRecruiter has been used by over 1 million businesses. You can list your jobs for free by going to ZipRecruiter.com/dude. Once more, that's ZipRecruiter.com/dude. That's like a 3-day free trial, I think. So you can get a sample, you can get an idea of it, figure out how the system works, get you some applicants. I did get one applicant before they shut my shit down, but since they completely closed my account, I can't get to it anymore.
When does Jorge start?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think her name was Amanda.
Got an email and said slaves aren't employees.
Damn it.
Yeah.
I also listed it at under minimum wage. So that might have been
Oh,
No,
Lawrence.
That's not
I
good.
do love that the service is that good that like your goofy listing
It
immediately
got popped quick.
Yeah.
So they're paying attention.
Man. Like,
Yeah.
we don't want you to. We're not going to hire anyone who comes in a crate or a shipping container.
Well, that's how I know that they have the fortitude to put up with my demands as a boss. They can sit there and sweat and not eat for a couple days.
Is the ad read?
Pretty much. Once more, that's ZipRecruiter.com/dude. Thank you so much for your sponsorship, ZipRecruiter.
So I have a related thing
good.
about the Willems household.
Let's leave
What
it.
I like about James and Elise's.
box. You can say it, our cardboard box.
Well, no. What I like about them is, so we here at Funhaus have an internship program. We just had 3 new interns start. James and Elise love to take advantage of the internship program, which I think is fantastic. So
yeah.
we had Jennifer before, who was a fantastic intern. She interned twice. She's going
Yeah.
off to Germany. God bless. Wish her the best. And then she was also a dog sitter for James and Elise, which I thought was really cool. Napoleon.
Paid dog sitter.
Okay, yeah.
it's
But then
for free.
But then, oh, that's fine. It's good that you find.
And I bought her gummy snacks.
So Napoleon, as I just found out, who is our other intern, fantastic intern.
He's wonderful.
I believe he's your new dog sitter since
is.
Jennifer was unavailable.
She went to Germany.
Yeah.
All week we've been telling Benson that his cousin Napo is coming. We say, cousin Napo coming.
I guess I'm just noticing a trend
Oh, yeah.
in how our interns are all becoming dog sitters for you guys.
They're all terrible at Photoshop, but they love animals.
They're all really good.
Well, I mean, it just goes to show that a Funhaus internship means new and exciting opportunities.
Yeah.
Career opportunities.
Sleep where we fuck.
Yeah.
The couch?
The kitchen
The
floor.
kitchen sink.
God.
Almost.
This reminds me of a No Man's Sky article.
Please
Actually,
do tell.
well, I was hoping you sent
I got a
us-
No Man's Sky article for you.
you sent us an article that I was hoping would come up because I thought it was really interesting. Where I forget who wrote it, but they were discussing the leak, which is sort of dated to us
Is
now.
this the games industry Rob Fahey editorial?
Is this the Kotaku article?
It may be games industry.
Because that's one I was going to reference. Yeah, there's
Oh, okay. I'll let you reference it then, because you'll do it much more
I
articulately.
mean, maybe. I don't know if this is the same thing, but yeah, Rob Fahey, writer at Games Industry, he's been publishing a lot of pretty great editorials lately. It's one of those great situations where I may not agree with him, but I think he always makes good points. In this case, he put pretty blistering, it was a pretty blistering wag of the finger towards Games Press that publicized No Man's Sky leaks early. Well, hey now.
I mean, we were one of them.
Yeah.
So, no, we
Adam
weren't.
especially.
No,
Yeah,
we weren't.
just me.
So his point is that games media should have been aware of the day one patch situation, which we were and said pretty explicitly on our episode of The Know. So I'm claiming exception from his ire. But so his point is that the game leaked. He doesn't necessarily blame players for wanting to play it early or other players for wanting to see it. But, and this is the point that I agree with, he says that members of the games media that claim to be experts in the matter should have been more responsible in reporting on those leaks to the extent of knowing that the game wasn't final or that a day one patch probably would have been coming and that the game as streamed was not its retail game state. And that by publicizing and spreading the leak video, that they were knowingly damaging the perception of that game without providing the what is the phrase, the due diligence to explain that the game wasn't finished.
Sure.
And then also maybe discouraging people from watching unfinished footage of the game, which we did. So I feel good about that.
I'm just okay. I'll play both sides here real quick.
Sure.
Was there anything radically different in the patch? Like, were all the textures in the game completely missing, and was like the model of the gun and the ship all missing before the day one patch, or was it pretty much representative of what the game was going to be?
That's a fair point. With a few exceptions, I think it was pretty representative. There were some things that either didn't work or were super buggy. Like some of the upgrades actually made things worse. There was some stuff like that.
Okay.
And we talked about it on The Know, if you remember. Like there were some animals that just didn't spawn right. Like they
Sure.
would be spawned in the ground.
Yeah.
Those things apparently got fixed. So the day one patch did fix some things, but
Okay.
on the whole, I don't think the day one patch addressed any core issue that people have with the game.
I would say
There was an entire section at the beginning
Oh, okay. There you go.
Okay, that's fine.
bunch of,
But
like content and the whole quest system wasn't
Oh,
there.
okay.
I'm saying I
There's
agree.
a very loose quest system.
I agree on the side that you should, as a journalist or whatever the hell you want to call yourself, you should be forward with all the information that is presented of, hey, this is leaked stuff. This is how we usually are if we get to play a game early, like anything at E3. I will never play a game early at E3 and go, what a piece of shit,
Yeah, this is
broken
garbage.
garbage. But like if there's any bug or anything, I go, I'm getting early access to this. I understand games go through a development cycle. Fine, totally. So that's okay. But at the same time, too, it's not your job as anyone who covers this sort of stuff to defend a game company for their product.
I think it is. I think if you purport yourself to be an expert on games media or game production, I think you do have a certain responsibility to inform people that.
I'm with you there. Inform. That is it. That is your job, is to inform. But to go out there and say, I'm with you there, saying you shouldn't go out there and go, if a game leaks early and you play it and go, what a broken piece of mess, and then you go, well, it's not really the final version. Just be upfront with that.
Yeah.
That's just my sort of, I don't know. That's my takeaway.
Oh, I agree.
Which isn't much anything new, so.
But boy, we can't hear you.
Yeah, Omar, you're very quiet.
Yeah, well, you're really muffled. No,
Elise
that's even more muffled.
is sitting on the speaker.
I think that this is kind of another. I mean, so it's what games industry is probably one of the more like professional, holistic, respected outlets, and that's kind of butting up against a bunch of YouTubers who find much more benefit in kind of whipping up a good story for their audience, because that's what everybody wants. They want intrigue. They want the number one amazing game of the year is buggy as fuck and it's terrible. That's a much more interesting story than a game leaked and it's not fucking finished, so maybe keep an open mind, But I think this is one of those examples of this is the progression of all media. And as sad as it is, this kind of means that gaming is mature whenever you get a bunch of essentially tabloid outlets that will twist something to make a good story as opposed to reporting the truth. And that's the situation we're in now, and it's not going to change.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I commend him for coming out and saying such
You
a
have to
thing.
say
but
something, yeah.
I hope that he says it with a long sigh, understanding that like it's like shouting into the wild, wild west and say like, stop robbing carriages.
Well, except there are comparable industries where that shit wouldn't fly, and I really like that he made the comparison to film.
yes,
Movies.
like if you see a screener with the effects aren't done and maybe some of the storyboarding is still in there. I think
Still
I
didn't
think
stop
the
X-Men Origins Wolverine from
Oy.
making an ass load of money.
I think I think the difference is between the two comparisons, and this is to a degree where idealistically the responsibility of games media comes in, is that I think it's easier to tell if you're watching a film that it's not finished. If something pops up and it says like placeholder
Oh, yeah, that's
effect,
true.
you're like, oh, that's a placeholder. It's a movie's not
Yeah,
done.
yeah.
And also by means of getting it, I think people understand that it's not been finished yet. So if you buy a DVD off of a street corner in New York of Infinity War, it's not out yet. Like, I think it's pretty clear. I don't think the gaming populace makes those leaps of logic yet, considering I saw some, and I hate to keep going on tangents, but I saw like a screenshot of some dude saying like, it would take 1 week max for one developer to put multiplayer in No Man's Sky. There's no excuse. They should just do it. And so it's things like that. It's like,
Glad
that's
he
what
knows.
game development is?
Here's the thing too, in terms of games media as a whole. I think you have mature people who can see things in a mature way. But you will never have an entire like media press outlet, like a whole industry which is mature like that when you continue to pay games media as much as they get paid. Like, how much money did you make
Oh, I see.
writing about video games?
Almost nothing.
Almost nothing.
It was really hard to actually afford a shitty Koreatown apartment.
So if you want some responsible adult
Yeah.
who's going to consider everything and not just the bottom dollar, not to say that young people are the only people who are worried about profits and stuff like that, but like a mature person, a professor type, someone who like, I care about upholding the truth and the justice of it. You're not going to find it in the 16-year-old kid who is totally down
Yeah.
to write an article for, $20 a page.
There was this. I always do this. We do this at least once a month, but where we compare ourselves to real life things. So,
Fishing enthusiasts.
Actually, recently. So I listened to the TED Talks. Those are always really good. They did one recently on the Panama Papers.
Okay.
And that was really fascinating because it was this whole thing about where I may be wrong on some information here, but from my memory, it was the information was leaked to a German newspaper outlet, and it ended up being millions upon millions of documents about the whole thing with the Panama Papers and all this illegal activity of money being withheld for tax reasons and all these things. Whereas it ended up being the biggest leak in the history of journalism, but it was this fascinating thing where it didn't really behoove Germany to have all this information on people from Ethiopia or from Lithuania or different things. So in the first time in history or whatever, there was an internet collective of journalists who came together and they said, we're going to spend a year on this and we all have to stay quiet. And a lot of other journalists who were like, I need to make a buck. Oh God, something somewhat related to this Panama paper thing leaked in my country, and they're like, keep it, chill. We're going to do the big story and we're all going to blow it out. And they all ended up releasing their information at the same time. And it was this huge thing, and the president of Iceland or was the prime minister or whatever had to resign, and it was pretty crazy. This whole thing happened, and they were talking about how certain journalists were taking pay cuts and how they had to stay quiet this whole time.
Gosh.
When I hear stuff about that, I'm like, okay, those are actually journalists. Those are people who are changing the world. And it's if there's a guy who's I got this leaked copy of No Man's Sky, should I sit on it? Oh, I'm gonna blow this whole thing out. It's it doesn't matter. None of this matters.
Well, it matters in the sense that these are people's careers we're talking about. Hello Games, everything that they're going to do from now on kind of depends on the performance of No Man's Sky. So,
absolutely, but
and that's their families and their livelihoods.
Well, that's business. It rests on the product, and
I guess there's no crime, but still.
I mean,
it does kind of suck to
the
drive
product should
somebody's.
speak for itself.
Yeah.
What?
No, everything is context dependent. The product can't speak for itself if it's not done. And if that's what people are listening to and watching, that's kind of unfair.
But I think that what Adam's saying is that if the prime minister or the president of your country is funneling funds
I agree.
through an illegal intermediary, that's maybe a bigger deal than if No Man's Sky doesn't have the quests.
Oh, absolutely.
It may affect more people.
Well, there's the funny GIF or Vine or image or whatever they do, the Jurassic Park thing where they show that E3 trailer and it's wow, this is a lush game. There's a lot of stuff, and then they cut to the weird dinosaur that's with the crappy recorder flute, which is in my mind I go, well, they could always just say, well, you just didn't find the right planet.
That's what I was thinking too. Yeah,
you could do that with any game, really.
Yeah.
Bottom line, everybody with a 4chan account thinks that they're Mr. Robot and that Sony or Microsoft are the devil, and they're gonna try to leak their stuff, take them down. But it's no, you're just hurting normal people that have jobs and families.
Isn't the point of 4chan to not have an account?
I don't know. I clearly don't have a 4chan account.
We spent all day on there.
You can be I guess I can't say it.
Look, I still go to crack.com.
There's ways to identify yourself that no one likes.
My favorite thing, so there was a thread about us on 4chan on the video game thread, which I guess it's a weird thing.
Oh God, no.
It's so weird. It's people will write about us and you're not allowed to look. We're I want to read about what you say.
The same thing happens to games media and developers. Games media will talk shit on a game, and then the developer will be like, hey, I heard what you said, and they're like, yeah. Everybody's listening to everybody. Welcome to the internet.
I like that we were called a friend simulator.
Yeah.
I like that name.
That's a really good term.
Because we've called ourselves as much before.
Hey, first members, if you want to be our friends, get first memberships today.
That's not how it works.
That's exactly how it works.
Yeah.
Come watch my dog.
Yeah, if you take that next step and you work for us, you could watch James's stuff.
Well, the points you guys are all making is that we live in a capitalist society, and the content that gets created is largely driven by the market that wants to see it. And as sad as it fucking is, there's more people interested in the quest structure of No Man's Sky than in the Panama Papers. Maybe not the Panama Papers. Hopefully that one kind of
I don't think so. I think we are just in one. There's a lot of swimming pools.
Yeah, you're right.
And we are just in that swimming pool.
But to that point, and to James's point about relative pay scales, if there were a market for, fucking hate to use this phrase, ethical games coverage, if people cared about that enough, there'd be enough viewers and readers of it that it would be more lucrative, and then it would attract better talent.
Yeah.
But as it stands, I'm talking about having sex on Casper mattresses instead of writing 2,000-word articles about
Sure.
what it means to be a gamer. Or whatever.
We're all kings.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
We're all kings, so no one is. I
We're all
guess my
deposed.
takeaway here, I guess I'll say this, is not so much, I was joking earlier, but I was saying like, pessimism's good on a certain level. It's not great to be negative. I don't know. I know the two kind of go hand in hand, but this is my ultimate advice to you if you want to live a happy life, is just take things for what they are, enjoy them, and then just realize that these are all building blocks towards something bigger and better. So when I look at games like Destiny, people go, it's not the game that I want, or Star Citizen, it's not the game that I want. It's going to get there one day, and there is going to be like, I mean, who knows? Maybe it's going to be Cyberpunk 2077 or whatever. Exactly, who knows? But but this is what I'm going to say. Be optimistic, but be pessimistic.
I see.
So look at these things and realize that it will never live up to your expectation, and enjoy them for what they are. Take them in. Don't get caught up into the hype. If you want to pre-order a game, go for it, whatever. It's your fucking money. Do what you want. That's not for me to tell you what to do. But just take it at face value and understand what it is. Don't believe in.
Not for me to tell you what to do.
Don't
Here's
listen
what
to
you
hype.
need to do.
With the exception of
that's a
some
good
of the
point,
junk in like early access Steam drawers, a lot of games that come out are pretty much miracles. Like
Yeah, the fact that they get done and
yeah,
they work.
like and what they are compared to what games were 10, 15 years ago, it's like it's pretty cool, and that's not a free pass, but like there is junk. We've played junk, but like No Man's Sky doesn't seem like junk.
It's not
It just
junk.
seems like something that was misinterpreted to be more or something different, and it isn't necessarily that.
Well, there's two pieces to every form of art, right? There's the creator, and then there's the guy who just touches it and looks at it.
It's a hot dog.
Yeah.
What?
So it's easy to be an observer. It's very hard to be a creator. And so you are allowed to have an opinion because obviously art is being created for you, the observer. So you can have your opinion, you can play it, but if you're trying to yell at me that your opinion is more valid than someone else's, than the other jack-off who played the game, I don't really care because you're not the guy who made it. And I will never be able to make a game. Games are very hard to make. And I will always have respect for people who are willing to put the time and the hours into something that is a representation of themselves and put it out there for others to judge and then get yelled at. And it's like, those poor souls, I'm so sorry that you have to go through that sort of stuff. I mean, I guess we do it on some level, but this is fucking
Well, 4chan.
I guess my
Babytown Frolics compared.
So Adam's takeaway is please be realistic about your expectations. I would echo that. I would say specifically when it comes to games, please always remind yourself that it's going to be a game at some point. There's going to be a loop of mechanics, and this people really want to run away with this idea that someday a game will be the surrogate reality that they can plug into and live by those rules instead of these. I get that. I get the appeal of that, especially when it comes to like being a galactic space trader, pirate / bounty hunter, whatever. We've all seen Star Wars. Just please understand yourself enough to know that even though your brain wants that, it's not really realistic. It kind of reminds me when we were coming up to Mass Effect 3, I swore on my life that the ending was going to be garbage and none of the side quests were going to pay off in a meaningful way because they couldn't. There was too much, and it has to be a game at some point. There has to be developers that make all that content, and the expectations were unrealistic based on the fact that human beings had to do it on a budget and under time constraints. I feel like it's the same with No Man's Sky. If you're really going to create a new digital reality, and you're really expecting it to just be like a caged simulation of our reality on a PS4, at some point that's got to trip your "this can't happen" response, right? Or it should have, or maybe in the future it will. Now that you've gone through this, I don't know.
I hope at least someone will walk away listening to this podcast and go, "Yeah, maybe I should temper my expectations."
Maybe.
That's at
It's
least
nice
the
to
hope.
believe.
I absolutely, and always be hopeful that it's going to get better because obviously, look, 20 years ago, look at what VR was, and now look at what it is today. We're still not quite there because now we're still tethered, and we have clunky controllers and a headset that if you hit a wall, someone's going to die soon doing this stuff, and it's going to happen. But it's getting better, and it's all steps. And considering how much of just a freaking leap we've made as a species is ridiculous. I mean, 200 years ago we were drowning on the side of boats and marrying our 14-year-old cousins. Now we have
still
VR.
happening. Yeah.
Well, I know, but we've gotten a little, the percentage has dropped. What?
Maybe Maybe.
I
have
want
my
to hear
doubts
more
in
about
that
this
regard.
drowning on the sides of boats.
I want to hear more about Cousins.
I guess that still happens. I was thinking of like falling off the Santa Maria. That's what I was going to try to say.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, we were trying to discover
What a
new
big problem.
land. We were
People
like,
keep falling off these damn boats.
Yeah.
That there were many people that fell off the Santa Maria. The Pinta.
there's a
Yeah. Slippery decks on the
that
Pinta.
shit's a wreck. It's sometimes hard to speak at the speed of thought.
Yeah.
Going a mile a minute. Always. I love it. All right, guys. Well, I think that's going to do it for today's podcast. No Man's Sky, still interesting. I guess my closing thought on the game itself, is that it's unique. And sometimes, if you played enough games, that's all that matters.
Yep.
It's that it's just different. So that's what I would say about it. If you played so many games that you feel like you understand them all, give this one a shot. It might surprise you. We got the post show coming up. That's where we look at some fan art, take some comments. If you guys are listening on the audio version or maybe just watching this on YouTube, that post show goes up on roosterteeth.com for first members. So you might want to look into that. It's a pretty good time. We get to look at people drawing weird pictures of us and take live questions from the audience. So it's our time to sit down and rap with you kids. Just rap with you a little
And don't
bit.
forget, Overwatch Competitive Season 2 is coming soon.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to those changes, man.
We'll see you
No more coin flips.
there.
Did you
Yeah,
guys see
so-
my cool free jump that I
Yeah,
did?
that was pretty
That was
sweet.
great.
Very sweet. So thanks for listening, everybody. We'll be back next week. And if you have some time and you feel like it, maybe give us a little review on iTunes or your podcast service of choice.
Why aren't we on
Recommend us to a friend,
Spotify
something
yet?
like that. That's up to them, man. I guess I should follow up again, but I remember I applied and they were like, oh, we don't accept applications, but if you're big enough, we'll make sure you get on.
What?
So,
I mean,
all right.
I looked at the gaming section on there. It's abysmal.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll hit him up again.
Do it
then.
again.
Okay.
The one guy working at Spotify is like, I'm busy.
Ugh, got all these emails. I gotta go home.
Listen, George, Spotify. I want to be on your platform of choice.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. See you next week.
Bye, y'all. I need to grab my glasses. You didn't do that man who dresses up as a giant bat because his parents got killed once and he's rich. Seriously.
Yeah, but
dare you.
at least he's having fun. This didn't feel like this. This felt like David Ayer maybe had some sort of practical effects for the Putty Patrol that looked like shit. They realized after the fact looked like shit.
It was a mask that they wore.
So they were like, we have to cover it with, we have to cover all this
Bubbles.
with CG. Just put a big bubble thing over his head because it's really cheap to do,
Right.
and it's just, but it'll kind of be scary or whatever. Like, it was these problems that just like drove me up the wall.
Practical effects all went to Killer Croc, Unsung Hero, the movie. And
Look, Killer
Didn't
Croc.
look
I am
terrible.
I was gonna say Killer Croc. I thought looked pretty cool,
Yeah.
except for when he did the crawl.